In a typical Pokemon singles battle, you're likely to see combos of the same top tier Pokemon fighting against each other. For example, both players might have a great Tusk on their team. But in a Pokemon Draft League, each Pokemon can only be on one coach's team, meaning you'll never play an opponent who has your same Mon. In most cases, the top tiers will get drafted first, but once more of them get taken and each coach's draft points start to get lower and lower, Pokemon that are typically considered weaker will start to get picked. I'm a newish draft player, and my favorite aspect of this format is that it can allow lower tier Mons to really shine. But on top of that, many drafts in the Scarlet Violet era use a format called low tier Terra. This means that only Pokemon who fall below a certain point threshold can terrestrialize. For example, in a draft league I recently participated in, Rotom Heat cost 11 points, meaning he fell out of the Terra Captain range, as our threshold was 10 points and below. Now, on the other hand, Rotom Frost fell at just 6 points, meaning he could terrestrialize if you drafted him. Now, in this video, I'm going to cover 7 Pokemon that you might not think of as powerful, but on the right draft can be incredible Terra Captains. A quick caveat I want to say is that I'm going to try to focus on underrated Terra Captains, Pokemon that you might not expect to be game changers. There are a lot of Pokemon who fall in the 8 to 10 point range who technically qualify as low tier Terra Captains, but for the most part it's pretty obvious why they're strong. For example, both Jolteon and Espeon fit this criteria, but they are both strong, fast special attackers. So obviously, giving them the ability to terrestrialize in a meta where not everyone has it will only make them stronger. But for this video, I'm going to try to focus on some of the more niche captains who can still make big waves. The first Pokemon I'm going to be talking about is Dipplin. Dipplin is a grass dragon type with decent defensive stats at 110 defense and 80 special defense. He's not exactly a powerhouse, although he does have a respectable 95 special attack stat. The one exciting thing about Dipplin is that in Gen 9, he received a new evolution in the form of Hydrapple, who's actually a pretty strong special attacker, and he gets the Regenerator ability, which recovers health each time he exits the field. But for Dipplin, this means that he can now hold the Eviolite item, which gives him a 50% boost to both his defensive stats. And all of a sudden, he goes from decent bulk to an actually reliable tank. Now, the worst part of the Eviolite for a lot of Pokemon is that once it's knocked off, you no longer get those defensive boosts. But Dipplin has the ability Sticky Hold, meaning he cannot lose his item. This helps you avoid it getting knocked off, but also helps if somebody wants to trick a Choice Scarf onto you or something. Now, unfortunately for Dipplin, he does still suffer from a 4 times weakness to Ice, as well as weaknesses to Fairy, Dragon, Poison, Bug, and Flying, meaning he's probably pretty easy for your opponent to prep for. On most draft boards, Dipplin will probably cost only around 2 to 4 points, so he is a cheap grab. But if you have Dipplin as a Terra Captain, you can remove those weaknesses and let him take full advantage of his Sticky Hold Eviolite bulk. So the first set I'm going to show off for Dipplin utilizes Terra Steel. Terra Steel is great on Dipplin because it turns his ice weakness into a resist, as well as resisting many of the other types that hit him hard, and gives him an immunity to toxic poison. Now, on top of that, Dipplin actually gets the move Gyro Ball, a steel-type move whose power is based on how much slower you are than the opponent. So, you could potentially use Terra Steel to knock out the Fairy or Ice types that are typically looking to do big damage to Dipplin. The next move I have on this set is Giga Drain, which lets you hit enemies and gain some health back. And the move after that is Recover, which is great on a bulky Mon because he can recover a large amount of health in one move. Now, the last move plays into these recovery options. The last move is Infestation. It's a great move to throw in this toolkit, as you can trap an enemy who might not be able to out-damage your recovery and potentially get a somewhat stally kill. So that's the first set with Dipplin. Now, this next one, I wanted to use a different Tera type, so this set uses Tera Fairy. Again, this turns all the typical weaknesses into regularly effective moves, and of course, you lose your Dragon weakness, and it becomes a full immunity, which is definitely a plus. For the moves, I am once again rehashing Giga Drain and Recover. I think these are both pretty reliable moves on Dipplin. Then in this set here, I've given him Terra Blast, as Fairy is just always a great type to use offensively, especially in Draft League. Now, instead of Infestation, I've swapped that out for Dragon Tail. So the last set we were trying to trap our opponent, this set we're trying to force them to switch out. It's a great option just to allow Dipplin to potentially face someone who he might have a better matchup into. So that's Dipplin. Those are the two sets I thought of for him. I think there's a lot more possibilities for Dipplin. I could see Terra Poison or Terra Ice also being strong, and I could even imagine cases where you might not want to run the Eviolite. You might want to run the Rocky Helmet, or maybe even Leftovers. So there's definitely a lot to be done with this mon. Okay, the next Pokemon I'm going to be talking about is Raichu, and I've actually used Raichu as a Terra Captain in a draft league I previously participated in, so he's very near and dear to my heart. As we all know, Raichu is a Gen 1 full electric type who does not really hold a candle in the current meta. The best thing going for him is probably his 110 base speed, but with only 90 base attack and special attack, he's typically not doing any major damage. But he actually has a pretty wide moveset that can help him operate in some creative ways, especially as a low-tier Terra Captain. And on most draft boards, he will fall in the 3 to 5 point range. This first set here utilizes Terra Water, which is great on Raichu because Terra Water gives you a weakness to electric moves, but thanks to the ability we're using, Lightning Rod, he's actually immune, and instead, electric moves will give him a special attack boost. Along with that, Raichu gets the move Surf, meaning he can take advantage of the Terra with a strong stab move. I actually used this to counter a Landorus in my last draft, and it worked pretty well. Now, for the other moves, I've given him the combo of Wish and Volt Switch. These are a great combo as you can take advantage of pivoting and actually heal up one of your stronger mons. And the last move on this set is Encore, which is a great way to trap your opponents and set your Wish pivot up. So this is a pretty utility-based set that can heal other Pokemon, but can also be great situationally to do some water stab damage. Now, this next set that I'm going to do is the total opposite of utility. This is a Choice Scarf set, although I also think Choice Specs could work if you're playing someone with a slower team. This set uses Flying type Terra Blast as the first move. Flying is a great offensive type, and once again, we are going to use the Lightning Rod ability so that we avoid that electric weakness. The next moves, I have Thunderbolt. I could also see someone who's a bit riskier than me wanting to do Thunder. These are both great stab moves that take advantage of his electric power, and electric is also a great offensive type. So already we have the combination of flying and electric. Now this next move is Grass Knot. Grass Knot adds some more coverage to rock and ground types, which we are currently missing from our coverage. And the last move on this set is Volt Tackle. Now, I was unsure about putting this one, but I think having a physical move on a set like this can be good to throw off any special walls that might otherwise be walled by Raichu. I could also see the argument for just putting Volt Switch again. It's always great to be able to pivot, but I wanted to be a little creative with this set. And a funny thing about this set is it could actually be Terra Electric instead of Flying if you want to double down on that electric power. And in that case, you could swap out the Terra Flying Blast for Volt Switch. Depending on what your opponent's draft looks like, you could make those decisions. I wanted to do 3 sets for Raichu because, like I said, I think he has a lot of utility, a lot of variety to him. So here's one more set, and I really like this one. Now, I should say I sadly traded away my Raichu in my draft league before I got the chance to use this set, but I do think it is good. So for the item, we are giving him Light Clay, plus the 2 moves Reflect and Light Screen. And instead of Lightning Rod, we are running his different ability Static this time. Static makes it so that if you get hit by a physical move, you have a chance to paralyze them. Now, this pairs really well with Reflect and Light Screen, especially Reflect, because if you're up against a physical attacker and they are hitting you with a contact move and you've got your Reflect up, chances are you're going to live that move, and that also increases your chances of getting the Paralyze off. Now, let's say you're just getting unlucky and you don't get those paralyzes. For the next move, I put on Nuzzle. Nuzzle is such a great move. It has 100% accuracy, unlike Thunderwave, and it has a 100% chance to paralyze. So if the statics are not working out for you, you can always just go for the safe Nuzzle. The last move, we are once again putting on Volt Switch. Volt Switch is especially good here as it can help you pivot to someone who might be a little more powerful and can actually take advantage of these screens that your Raichu has hopefully set up. Now, the Terra type for this set is tricky. I do think that Flying could work once again, as it does get rid of the ground weakness, but I also think Grass is nice here, as it turns the ground weakness into a resist and is just a pretty good defensive pivot for a Pokemon like Raichu. So that's Raichu. Those are my 3 sets. I think he's a really interesting Terra Captain with a whole lot of potential. I think most of the moves on these sets could be mixed and matched quite a bit to make your own unique ones, and there's probably options with Raichu that I haven't even considered, so there's definitely a lot more to be done with this Mon. For the next underrated low-tier Terra Captain, I'm going to be talking about Trapinch. Now you might be saying, how is Trapinch here as a potentially strong Terra Captain? Why would it not just be Vibrava? And actually, on some boards, their final evolution, Flygon, is only 9 or 10 points, so he actually could qualify as a low-tier Terra Captain too. But Trapinch has a very specific niche, and he only costs 2 points on basically every draft board I've ever seen, so I think he can be a great budget Terra Captain pick. To explain Trapinch's viability, you have to first look at his ability. See, while Vibrava and Flygon both have the ability Levitate, Trapinch gets the ability Arena Trap, an ability that is typically banned in Smogon singles, but not often banned in Pokemon Draft League. Arena Trap traps any grounded Pokemon, preventing them from switching out. Now on top of that, Trapinch gets First Impression, a strong priority bug move. And even though Trapinch is only a first stage evolution, his attack stat of 100 is respectable. I mean, it's higher than Raichu, who we were just talking about. So, if you throw Terra Bug on Trapinch, give him a choice band, he can use one pretty powerful bug priority move on an opponent who cannot switch out. Now in draft, if you're playing a team that has a few grounded psychic or dark types, or even just some defensively weak guys, Trapinch can be a first impression machine, coming in, using first impression, getting a KO, leaving, and potentially doing it 2 to 3 times in a single match. I think this is really cool. I think Trapinch is really cool. But unfortunately, there is not much else he can do. Now, you can of course put Earthquake on him in case of Steel types, and Rock Tomb is a good option to slow opponents down so your next Pokemon can actually take them down. Or you could even throw Stealth Rocks on him as a 4th move. But realistically, this might as well be a one-move moveset because First Impression is the move you're gonna be clicking with this guy 99% of the time. So that's my only set for Trapinch, but I think it's really cool that draft is the type of format where a first stage Gen 3 ground type can find a viable spot on someone's draft. Okay, up next is Exeggutor. Now, Exeggutor is not only my favorite Terra Captain I've ever used, but also one of my favorite Pokemon in general. I think he is a great example of a Pokemon who is generally not that strong competitively, but in draft can operate in so many different ways. I honestly think I could spit out 10 viable Exeggutor sets, but I will limit it to just 3 for this video. The one common thread I'll note is that generally, all of these sets are going to take advantage of the sun as a weather condition, so if you are running a draft team with a sun setter like Torkoal or Ninetales, Exeggutor could be a strong low-tier Tera captain, especially as he usually only costs around 5 points. Now, this first set here takes advantage of the sun, as we're going to be using Exeggutor's ability Chlorophyll, which doubles his speed when the sun is out. So normally Exeggutor's speed caps out at the low 200s, but up in the sun, his speed rises to as high as 458, which will outspeed almost any Pokemon not holding a Scarf or with another speed boost of some type. Now, for this first set, I went very offensively, taking advantage of this Egg's base 125 special attack stat. With maximum EVs and a modest nature, Exeggutor has a pretty impressive special attack stat of 383, with this set getting an extra boost from the item Life Orb. For the first move, we have Tera Blast, and to take advantage of it, we will be throwing Tera Fire on this Exeggutor, which gets the stab boost from the terrestrialization as well as a boost from the sun. The next move is Solar Beam, also obviously a super strong special grass attack, also gets a stab boost, and, assuming the sun is out, we avoid having to waste a turn charging. The next move is Psychic Noise, again, a strong special move, and a stab option once again. Now, I really like Psychic Noise here over Psychic, because it's still a strong Psychic move. It can break Stall by stopping Recover, it can break through Substitute, it can stop Pokemon from abusing the weather if they're using a move like Morning Sun. However, I will stipulate that depending on the opposing team you're prepping for, Psychic Noise might be better replaced by plain old Psychic, or even a Psyshock if there's a target with a low defensive stat that you want to target specifically. Maybe there's a Blissey, a special wall that you need to prep to break. Now, for the last move, I threw on Sludge Bomb, which lets you hit fairies super effectively, just as a little bonus type coverage for this hyper offensive Exeggutor. So that's the first set for him. But for the next one, I thought I would do the opposite of hyper offense. And so I decided to come up with the most defensive Exeggutor I could think of. So this set utilizes Exeggutor's other ability, Harvest, with a Citrus Berry as the item. Harvest means that there is a 50% chance Exeggutor will regrow his Citrus Berry, even after he's already used it. And in the sun, that chance goes up to 100% chance to restore the berry at the end of each turn. So this set once again benefits from the sun, but not as necessarily as the speed boost we get from Chlorophyll. For the stats, I've maxed out HP and split the remaining between the two defensive EVs, so this is a bulky egg. For the Tera type, I went with Tera Fairy on this sample set. Tera Fairy is just such a good defensive type, and in this case especially, it eliminates the fire and the dark weakness. But I actually think Dragon type Tera could also work with the right prep and cover a lot of the same bases. Now, for the moveset, and my goal here was to make a really annoying moveset, which is why the first move is Leech Seed. Leech Seed obviously sets a hazard on your opponent that drains their health while restoring your own. For the next move, Substitute. Substitute pairs really well with Leech Seed, and if you can get Substitute up on an opponent who's already been Leech Seeded, you could potentially trap them into a loop of trying to break your Substitute while you continuously heal from the Leech Seeds. Or, if you get the Leech Seed up, you could assume they'll switch to get rid of the seeds, and use that as your opportunity to throw a Substitute up. And with the Citrus Berry Harvest combo, you'll practically never run out of the health you need to get the substitutes up. Now, for the last two moves, I think there are a lot of variations you could do here. You definitely want to do some damage, but I've ended up landing on Sludge Bomb for the third move slot, because it lets you hit the grass types who are otherwise immune to your Leech Seeds, and the 30% chance to poison could get some more of that residual damage, while you continue to get your substitutes up. For the fourth slot, I currently have Stun Spore, as I think paralyzing fits really well with this set. You could potentially outspeed your opponent once they're paralyzed, and you could also just keep clicking substitute, hoping that you finally get that full para, and then you basically will get your citrus berry heal, and you trap them in what is a really annoying loop. I do think that Protect could be a fun option if you want to dive full in on the stall aspect of this, or even Terra Blast for some dragon coverage. Energy Ball is not bad, and Psychic Noise, again, could have some utility. Really, this fourth move is probably whatever your prep covers for the most. Okay, so that's our second set, so let's do a third and final Exeggutor set. So I keep mentioning Exeggutor in the sun, and this last set could take advantage of that, as we once again have the ability Chlorophyll. But let's be honest, in a draft match, you never know if you'll be able to keep your weather up. Your opponent might bring a Rain Dance Murkrow for all you know. That's why this last set puts Exeggutor's speed at 179. So when it's doubled with Chlorophyll, it hits 358, which will outspeed most major speed tiers. But in case the sun is gone, the first move here is Trick Room. 179 speed is low enough to be slower than most Pokemon, meaning once you click Trick Room, you'll now get to move first for a few turns. Exeggutor is bulky enough that he should be able to tank one hit to set up the Trick Room, and then our second move, Giga Drain, is a great option to heal some health back and do some good stab damage. Next, I'm repeating Fire Terra Blast, as I think Fire is genuinely just a great Terra type on Exeggutor. It gives some great coverage as well as some defensive utility, especially to avoid the ghost and dark weaknesses he normally has. And the last move is Future Sight, for applying pressure for your other Sun abusers to use. With Future Sight up, your opponent basically has a ticking time bomb of a super strong psychic move that's going to go off in 2 turns, so you could use that to kind of control the momentum and pivot around. Now, for the item on this set, I threw on Leftovers for some additional recovery, but I also think a cool option would be Room Service, which lowers your speed when Trick Room goes up, in case your opponent had someone slow like an Ursaluna that you were worried they would be slower than you in the Trick Room. This is a great option to make him slower than basically everyone. So that's it for Exeggutor. I do think these 3 sets just tap the beginning of the barrel for this guy. There's options for him to be a screen setter like Raichu was. He could get really crazy with a Custap Berry Woodhammer, or even a weakness policy set. So yeah, definitely lots more to do with the egg, but we've definitely started to scratch the surface. And next is going to be Hariyama. This big fella has been a bit outclassed by his new Electric Paradox counterpart Iron Hands, but on most draft boards, Hariyama will cost a very affordable 7 or 8 points, whereas Iron Hands is probably going to cost you more like 14. So let's look at a few sets that show why Hariyama is a strong Terra captain and can hold his own against his robotic counterpart. So Hariyama is slow, but he's got a pretty strong HP and attack stat, sitting at 144 and 120 respectively, meaning he can tank some hits and also hit like a tank in the right circumstance. This first set here maxes out both those stats and then gives Hariyama the item Assault Vest to give him a bit more bulk. The Assault Vest raises Hariyama's special defense, but at the cost of him not being able to use any non-damaging moves. But that's okay, because we want this guy to be doing damage. Now, on top of the Assault Vest, we'll also give him the Thick Fat ability, which halves damage he takes from ice and fire moves. This ability comes in handy for the Terra type we're going to use, as we will be choosing Terra Ground, meaning even the new weakness of ice moves are not going to be that threatening, especially because most ice moves, besides maybe Triple Axle and Ice Shard, tend to be special attacks. So Thick Fat plus Assault Vest, it's not going to do too much damage to him. Now, the reason for Terra Ground is because Hariyama actually gets the move Headlong Rush. So all of a sudden, we have like a pseudo Great Tusk here. Like Great Tusk, we also get to keep our stab boost on our second move, Close Combat. So now we've got Close Combat and Headlong Rush, both super strong moves that do lower our defensive stats after first use, or any use. Of course, the Terra Ground does create some new weaknesses besides the ice, specifically water and grass, which is why for coverage moves, I felt like Thunder and Fire Punch were great last moves for this set. One thing I will say about Hariyama and this set is that he has a pretty wide, expansive move pool. He gets basically all the punching attacks, and so depending on what you need to cover for your opponent's draft, really any of the potential punching moves could be swapped out for each other on any of these sets. Now, this next set is a bit weird, but I actually really like it. So instead of Thick Fat, this time we'll be using the ability Guts, which is probably the more commonly used of Hariyama's abilities. It gives him an attack boost when he has a status condition, which is also why our item will be the Flame Orb, an item that burns Hariyama after being out on the stage for one turn. So he will immediately get a large attack boost from that burn, instead of having his attack stats, which is what burn typically does. For our Terra type, I decided to go with Terra Fairy on this set, mainly because it's just an amazing defensive type that nullifies many of Hariyama's weaknesses and could increase his longevity for a bit. For the first move, this is typical, but we go with Facade, the normal type move that doubles in power from 70 to 140 when the user has a status condition. So this, combined with the boost from Guts by holding our Flame Orb, makes this move able to annihilate so many opposing Pokemon. If you want to increase the power of this move further, you could swap out the Terra Fairy for Terra Normal, but in my opinion, you don't necessarily need that boost in a lot of cases, and the defensiveness of Terra Fairy is really nice. For the second move, I went with Drain Punch, which will allow Hariyama to hit with his Fighting Stab and also recover a bit and hopefully outlast the Burn Chip. Now, these moves leave a glaring hole in being unable to hit Ghost types, which is why the third move is going to be Knockoff, a phenomenal Dark type move that also removes items. So while it is great Ghost type coverage, it really hits everybody and does some lasting damage to them. Now for the last move, I did experiment with Bulk Up, but honestly, I just don't think there's many situations where you're going to be wanting to click a Bulk Up over a Facade or Drain Punch. So instead I went with Whirlwind, which I did not actually know Hariyama received until I was browsing his move pool. But Whirlwind is a really interesting utility option, especially in draft, because you can get rid of any physical walls that might be brought out against Hariyama, and potentially get you in an opportunity to use another Drain Punch or a Facade, or just put you in a situation to be getting the chip damage you need for Hariyama to be winning. So that's the second set. Now for this last set, I decided to be a bit more hyper-aggressive, and this time we'll once again use his ability Guts, although the goal is not to use a Flame Orb to force a burn, but rather this is just a preventative measure in case he does get burnt. This set is all about getting maximum power, which is why the first move is Belly Drum. This move uses 50% of Hariyama's health, but in exchange quadruples his attack stat, maxing it out at 4 times attack. Of course, even on a bulky guy like Hariyama, losing 50% of your health is significant, which is why we give him the Citrus Berry as his item to gain 25% back. And for the Terra type on this set, we are going with Terra Steel. I think this can be really crucial here, as it removes the weaknesses to Psychic, Fairy, and Flying, so hopefully Hariyama will be able to pull off the Belly Drum and actually live. And on top of that, the Terra Steel type will also boost the first attacking move on this set, Bullet Punch. Even though Bullet Punch has a pretty meager 40 attack power, with Hariyama's attack stat maxed out from Belly Drum and a Terra Steel boost, this is not a move many opposing Pokemon would want to be staring down, especially not staring down 2 of them. If somebody switches in something, thinking they're going to tank a move, they actually have to tank 2 Bullet Punches, considering the priority. Then, I've put on Iron Head for another strong Steel Stab, as well as Ice Punch, mainly because it's the last elemental punch I haven't used yet. But again, this is one of these situations where you'd have to look at your opponent's draft to determine the best two last moves. Drain Punch could definitely be a good option here to keep that health restoring. Knockoff could be great again. Any of the elemental punches could be great. Close Combat, Headlong. Really, they're all interchangeable on a guy like Hariyama. It just depends what you need coverage for. So those are the 3 sets I've got for Hariyama. But yeah, he has a really diverse move pool, which I did not know until I really started experimenting with him. And I think the ability to swap his moves around can make him a really great prep option. He can basically do whatever you need on a given week. And I do think these sets have some pretty solid the building blocks to get you started on using Hariyama. Okay, the second to last low-tier Terra Captain I'm going to be covering is Wugtrio. Not Doug Trio, but Wugtrio. So this water garden eel variation of the Gen 1 ground type. I think these guys are really goofy looking, but I have seen them operate as Terra Captains in some really cool and different ways, so I wanted to talk about them. So the first set here I'm going to use is actually quite standard. It's actually very similar to the Randbats Wugtrio set. It's a choice band set, because Wugtrio actually has a pretty good base attack of 100 and a surprisingly good speed stat of 120. I'm not really sure why Wugtrio is fast, but to be honest, I'm not really sure why Dugtrio is fast either, but it seems to be a thing with their variations, so I guess we accept it. But anyway, taking advantage of that 120 base speed, we just load him up with 4 attacking moves, a choice band, and Terra Water to get that sweet double stab on water moves. The moves I've chosen are Liquidation, our strongest physical water option, then Aqua Jet for priority to snipe kills on weakened Focus Sash users, or maybe a Frail Choice Scarf user. And then for the last 2 moves, I put on Throat Chop, which is some great dark type coverage, and Stomping Tantrum. These combined let you hit some types that the water moves wouldn't be able to. Unfortunately, I do think Bulky Dragon and Bulky Grass types could hard wall this set, but hopefully you'll have some coverage for them on the rest of your team. You could also do the Terra Dark here, or even the Terra Ground if you wanted to specifically improve the damage of the Throat Chop or the Stomping Tantrum, but I went with Terra Water because I think the idea of a super strong choice band liquidation is fun. So that first set is really straightforward, and this next one is a bit weird. I'll start by saying I actually got this one from or Double D. I hope I'm pronouncing that in some form correctly. So that set is really straightforward, but this next one is a bit weird. I'll start by saying that I actually got this set from D Double. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but he is a Draft League YouTuber who used this set in his BBL draft match against Pokeaim. Now, he did not actually use Wugtrio as a Terra Captain, but rather just as a regular Pokemon in this match, but I think the fact that he was able to make it work so well, even without Terra type, shows that it could probably be just as strong with Terastallization, if not stronger. Now, I will link that match in the description so you can check it out in action, but this set holds a Focus Sash and actually aims to use it. It aims to be tried to be knocked out in one hit, because then you can use Pain Split to lower your enemy's health and bring yours back to half or even higher if your opponent has a high hit point stack. From there, you should be able to use either Terra Dark Foul Play, or Wugtrio's signature move, Triple Dive, which is a multi-hit water physical move, to finish off the opposing Mon. Now, if your moves are not killing the opposing Pokemon, or if they just switch out to someone new, you can then use the 4th move, Memento, which knocks out your Wugtrio, but halves both the attacking stats of the opposing Pokemon. This is a great pivot move that sends the message that Wugtrio has done his job, taken names, and now it's on to your next Pokemon. The set also has the potential to take advantage of Wugtrio's ability Gooey, which lowers the opposing Mon's speed if they make contact with Wugtrio. It has the potential to let Wugtrio win a speed battle he would otherwise use, and grab a KO after a Pain Split. Like I mentioned before, shoutouts to D-Double, who got into a semi-stall war with PokeAim's Tera Avalugg. It's really funny, but also a useful showcase of how this set actually could function in action. So once again, that is linked below, and I recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it. So that's all for Wugtrio. There's definitely some other cool ways you could use this. I think these two sets show a pretty interesting dichotomy and kind of what makes draft cool, that a low tier mon can work in two pretty starkly different ways. Okay, so our last but certainly not least on this list of impressive low tier Tera captains is Buizel, the pre-evolved form of Floatzel. You're probably saying, well, why would you not just choose Floatzel? And I suppose you could, but on many draft boards, Floatzel might fall in the low tier Tera point range, but he's often explicitly Tera banned, meaning even though he might be 8 or 9 points, there is a special ban on him from using terrestrialization. But luckily, Buizel can do just as much in the right circumstances. Now, Buizel is going to fall into that same category as Trapinch, where other than some extremely niche cases, there's probably only one viable way to use him effectively. But in that situation, this guy can be really effective, and I should know, I actually lost a draft playoffs game to a Tera Buizel, which is a shame I might not live down, so I have to include him in here to justify my own losses. All that said, here is the set that makes Buizel possibly the ultimate glass cannon. See, Buizel has the ability Swift Swim, which doubles his speed in the rain. On top of that, he has a pretty decent base speed stat for a first form Pokemon. It's 85, which means with maximum speed EVs, his speed in the rain could reach well into the 500s. Meanwhile, his attack stat is not great with a base 65, but we'll make it work. Here's what we do. We max out Buizel's attack and speed EVs with an Adamant Nature to boost that attack even further. Then, you draft a rain setter, like let's say Pelipper. So, Pelipper comes in and sets up the rain. Then, we bring in Buizel, who is holding a Choice Band for another attack boost. Then, we click Tera, and he's Tera Water for an extra attack boost. And then we spam Wave Crash, sniping as many kills as you can until the recoil kills your baby Weasel. So, just to go over all those boosts again, we are Max Attack, Adamant Nature, Choice Band, boosted by the Rain, boosted by Regular Stab, boosted by Terrestrialization, Wave Crash. Just to show how strong this is, I put this Buizel situation into the Pokemon damage calculator against a max defense Ting Lu. In this situation, Buizel's Wave Crash does a minimum of 108.9%, whereas non-Tera Floatzel in the otherwise exact situation does a minimum of 109.7%, meaning a difference of a minuscule 0.8% between the pre-evolved and the evolved form. Now, I'm going to be honest, if you're actually using Buizel, if everything goes according to plan, chances are you're not going to click any moves other than Wave Crash, similar to First Impression on Trapinch. But in draft, you never know what you'll face. So another 3 moves to throw on this guy are Aqua Jet for some good double stab priority, along with Flip Turn for potential pivoting in case maybe you want to threaten the Wave Crash, but it's not quite the time to release the nuke yet. And lastly, I put Crunch, just because it's a strong physical dark move, but maybe Brick Break is also a good option to break screens if you think that might be a possibility. Realistically, you might just end up clicking Wave Crash anyway, so this might be a bit of a moot discussion. But that's Buizel, the unexpected 2-point glass cannon, and also my last Pokemon for this video. So there we have it, 7 underrated, in my opinion at least, low-tier Tera captains to consider for your next Pokemon Draft League. Pokepastes of every set I showcased are linked in the description if you do actually intend to use them. I'd love to make a part 2 for this video at some point, so feel free to comment if there's a low-tier Tera captain you've used or even that you've faced and you were surprised at its strength and its utility. And until next time, enjoy your days, be safe, and use discretion.